night of your time also mentioned that we would be speaking about the idea of the transformation itself, the accelerating wave of collective consciousness that many of you have intuitively recognized reaches a critical mass threshold in and around your cycle that you call 2012. This simply represents the idea of crossing into critical mass, where you have the potential for total positive reality. You have that now, of course. But after 2012, the idea of positive energy will be so much more available to so many more of you that if you should choose to ride the crest of that wave, the leading edge of that wave of consciousness, you can accelerate so rapidly, you can attract to yourself so rapidly the things that are representative of your passion, of your joy, without knowing in any way, shape, or form how these things could have happened, beyond reason, beyond logic, that again, your life will become literally so dreamlike, it will be at first dizzying and disorienting until you get used to it. Literally, you'll be walking through life like it's a dream, marveling at the miraculous synchronicities that just are popping up as a matter of course. Yes. When you ride the leading edge of the wave of consciousness. If, however, you choose to continue to compartmentalize your physical mind and make it responsible for being in charge, and have to know the how, and have to know the why, and have to know all the details before you'll be willing to believe that the higher self can simply bring this to you, then you will, by choice, position yourself somewhere down the line from the leading edge, in some of the eddies and currents and backwashes in the wake of the leading edge. Now, it doesn't mean that you cannot find benefit in those locations, in those gradations of frequency behind the leading edge. But wherever it is you position yourself, you simply have to understand the effect you create will be absolutely directly commensurate with where you have positioned yourself, and it will not be any more than that. By definition, it cannot be any more than that. As an analogy, your visible spectrum of light, you understand that in the visible spectrum of light, red is a low frequency, the lowest visible frequency you can perceive with your eyes. Violet is the highest visible frequency you can perceive with your eyes in general. We understand many of you are beginning to stretch these boundaries, but for the purpose of this illustration, let's just stick with the common labeling of this visible spectrum. Now, you know, if something exists on the frequency of violet light, it's at a very high level of frequency, very high level of energy. And it will experience the things that go hand in hand with that level. If something chooses to exist on the other end of the spectrum, in the red frequency, it will be functioning at a lower wavelength, a slower wavelength, a lower vibration, and will only experience the things that are commensurate with that level in the spectrum. It's all energy, it's all light, it's all the same stuff, as you say, but the difference in gradation of the vibrational frequency will ultimately determine what is capable of being experienced on that level. If you're operating at a certain wavelength toward the lower end of that spectrum, you will only perceive red. Only. You will never perceive violet at that end of the spectrum. If you are operating at the violet end of the spectrum on a high frequency level, you will only perceive violet. You will never perceive red at that end of the spectrum. Ever. So, the leading edge of the wave of your collective consciousness on this transformation, you can live there and ride the crest, or you can allow yourself to float back into the wake. Somewhere in there will be vibrations that will be representative of whatever degree you are willing to allow your belief system to take hold. So, you must understand that if you do that, there are consequences to that. The consequence being that you can only perceive what is directly commensurate with the level you're on, and nothing else. Nothing lower, but nothing higher. But you are all capable of choosing to ride the crest, the leading edge. All right. Now, when some of you consider this, you get scared. It's going too fast for me. I might fall off. I might crash. I might smack into a brick wall. As if suddenly one would appear. Of course it will if you create it. But again, understand that if you create that brick wall, that's an indication you are no longer on the leading edge. Brick walls do not exist by definition on the leading edge. They only exist back down the line, in the wake, in one of the eddies, in one of the currents that is representative of belief systems that there are such things as brick walls. But if you're truly riding the leading edge, truly, as you say, surfing the crest, then you will understand that just like being on the top of the mountain, you have a clear and unobstructed view of everything in front of you. And you ride that wave right into ecstasy. Ride the leading edge of the ecstasy. Allow yourself the opportunity to know you can. You don't have to choose to. But then if you don't be surprised by what is commensurate for that level. It's completely up to you what to lock onto, what to believe, what to align with, what to associate yourself with. You can, on one hand, say, I understand these concepts. I believe these concepts. I will live these concepts. I am this idea. It can happen instantly, effortlessly, miraculously, wonderfully, joyfully, creatively, lovingly, now for me. Or you can recognize that you tend, quote unquote, choose to gravitate more to informational sources that confirm your own fear. Well, one should take their time. Well, one has to be careful with this stuff. Now, we understand that there is such a thing as recognizing and honoring whatever belief system you happen to have, and not pushing yourself beyond it if you truly don't believe you can, because that would simply be disastrous. But the idea is to understand and to clearly take responsibility for knowing that if you are aligning with someone that says, well, you can't just go full throttle because you have to be careful that you're not doing this and you're not doing that. You might fool yourself here, you might fool yourself there, and you have to take it easy. If you align yourself with that, that's all well and good. But understand that you are choosing to, and it has nothing at all to do with the fact that you could change your belief and allow yourself to ride the leading edge where things manifest instantaneously. You could. But if you are not, it's your choice. And that's, once again, where you really need to be passionate about being passionate and find out why you are choosing to not ride the leading edge. You will obviously have your own reason for not doing so. Whatever that reason is, whatever you feel is the need for safety, is up to you to determine. But just take responsibility and recognize the responsibility and the choice that you are making for understanding that it's not empirically true that you have to do it that way. It's not empirically true that you have to listen to what that person is saying as opposed to what this person is saying. It's just your choice. Take responsibility for it and then be passionate about finding out why you believe what you do, so that you can, if you are willing, open up to new beliefs that will allow you to move up the spectrum and be in the violet instead of in the red, financially speaking. So, allow yourselves to simply at every given moment recognize what you're doing. Let go of the need to understand the how of it. Because you see, one of the things that stops many of you from having the experiences that were described in the recording is that, for example, when someone says, well, you know, I simply got into the state where I believed I would simply receive more checks. Your physical, logical, reasonable mind goes, well, where the heck are they supposed to come from? I haven't done anything to earn that money. What are you saying? That some stranger just suddenly going to get into his head to pop a check in the mail to me for no reason whatsoever, and I'm just going to go to my mailbox and open a check that comes from a total stranger that's suddenly giving me exactly what I want? Yes! Yes, that is what's being said. Yes, that is one possible way. Yes, that is one possible example of what could happen. But when your logical, reasonable, physical mind going, how does that make any sense? The thing to remind it is that it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to make sense. When you stop needing it to make sense, then you'll make dollars. You have got to give up. You've got to give up your need, your physical mind's need for everything to have a reason, for everything to make logical sense in the physical third-dimensional world. If you say you wish to live in fourth-density reality, you must give up the things that are commensurate with the three-dimensional world, such as logic, reason. Not totally. I'm not saying be willy-nilly, fly by the seat of your pants people. I'm saying be aware of the fact that these things are simply points of view, and that you often stop yourselves from allowing these things to come to you because you logic them to death. You detail them to death, literally. You look for a chain of reasonable connection. And believe me, in fourth density reality, there are many chains that to a third density mind are not reasonable or rational at all. You have asked us, how do we travel from star to star? And we have explained to you, we don't travel from star to star. We're simply here, then we're simply there. The logical mind boggles. But how did you get there? How is it possible to go from here to there without stepping on all the places in between? That's not rational. That's not logical. Yes, it is from a different point of view. I'm talking about not abandoning logic. I'm talking about higher logic. The logic that comes from standing on the mountaintop where you can see the entire valley, the entire network, and where it makes sense to you on the mountaintop to say, if you actually go back 3 steps and then to the left, you're actually going to get there more quickly than if you just go straight ahead. Whereas down in the valley, the logical mind self is going, but everyone knows the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And if I go backwards, how can I get there sooner than if I go forwards? How? And the higher self goes, ugh. Because I can see that if you go forward there, the bridge is out. And if you take 3 steps back and go to the left, you go on a parallel road where the bridge is fine. But the point is that the language of the higher self cannot always communicate all those specifics to the physical mind, because the physical mind does not always have the capacity for that kind of translation. The only way that dialogue, most often than not from the higher self, translates to the physical mind is simply suddenly the urge to go back. The urge itself, the intuition itself, in the physical mind is the condensation and capsulization of the entire explanation from the higher self, saying, if you go 3 steps back and then go to the left and go down the parallel road, then the bridge is up. But all the physical mind will get is the tug. That's how it translates in physical reality, because the physical mind is not capable of actually perceiving in the same way the higher self is, and doesn't have to know all the reasons why and how. All it needs to do is know that that's part of who you are, and allow yourself to recognize that that is a communication and to follow it, and that you have received the information that you need, because it's on the same wavelength of your joy, of your passion. Why? Because you say it is. And you flow with it, and thus find out that it is. Or resist it for as long as you want, and keep walking on the same road until you get to the washed out bridge and go, oh, why didn't I listen to my intuition back there? Because you thought you were in charge, smarty. But you're not. Not you alone. You are in charge, but not you alone, physical mind. Physical mind, higher self, that's the you that's in charge. Both aspects of your being is the persona, not just the physical personality self. That's only a part of it. So if you want to know you're in charge, you have to behave like the whole you. And be willing to open up and receive and perceive in whatever way it works for you, the dialogue and the communication coming from the portion of yourself that is the higher self, that has the higher point of view, that has the bigger picture. And be willing to understand it's working on your behalf. It's not going to trick you. It's not going to deceive you. The only thing in your reality that can create the idea of tricks and deception is the physical mind's belief system, not the higher self. Because it is only in physical 3-dimensional reality that you can have the experience of a personality structure that can actually deny its own truth. So any tricks, any deception that you may be afraid of encountering can only actually be coming from the personality aspect that's actually afraid it's going to be deceived. That's the paradox. It can't come from the higher self because that's a bigger picture point of view. And it can clearly see the road. And there is no reason, there is no logic for the higher self to go, yeah, take the left road. Watch and see how my lower self falls into the river. This ought to be fun. Oops, I went with it. You are under the assumption that the higher self is immune from what you experience in physical reality. Incorrect. You are one being, and the higher self will suffer the slings and arrows that the physical mind shoots itself with. You are one being, and it is not detached from you, and it is not immune to the consequences of the physical mind's choices. But because the higher self is closer to the vibration of unconditional love, it will overlook it. again and again and again and again, attempting to unconditionally loving you, reminding you, please take the other road, please. Oh, here we go again. It is not immune to the consequences of the physical mind's acts and choices. Do not assume that it is. But it is close enough to unconditional love to forgive it and to keep giving you the benefit of the doubt. That's the relationship of your higher self. That's its job. To keep on guiding you no matter what. Because it is the vibration of unconditional love that the physical mind often refuses to allow itself to perceive. Through the belief systems it chooses to buy into that deny its truth to itself. So, higher self says, please, 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 know you are loved. Please, please, please allow me to love you. Please, please, please love yourself enough to know you're not alone in this. That you don't have to do it all. That you weren't designed to. You weren't expected to. Ever. Not once. Carry this burden by yourself. Let me be your guide because I am you. Become familiar with that portion of yourself. It is not detached, it is not separate, it is not aloof, it is not in its own realm unaware of what you are choosing to experience. It will also experience it in its own way. But nevertheless, will always overlook it and always urge you forward, or left, or back, or whatever is necessary. Take a deep breath and let this sink in deeply, deeply, deeply. And allow yourself to at least consider the possibility that you deserve to be on the leading edge of the crest of the wave of consciousness of the transformation. Take another deep breath. Now, in terms of your time frame, what is the time remaining for the segment of this transmission?
Okay. Now this person is asking, saying that they used to be happy and excited in life. I suddenly lost my excitement about everything. I lost the joy inside me without understanding why. And despite extensive personal development and trying various permission slips, they still feel joyless. I've lost the hope that this will change. I can't pinpoint any negative beliefs. I feel confident, worthy, and deserving of joy. I usually do what I feel like doing in the moment, but it doesn't feel like true excitement. What can I do to reconnect with authentic joy and excitement?
Well, you may not have negative beliefs to let go of, but you may have erroneous definitions to let go of, because it sounds like you have a certain expectation of how you're supposed to feel doing certain things that you choose to do. There is nothing that says that you have to be jumping up and down all the time with absolute giddiness to experience the idea of acting on your passion. Do not misunderstand the definition of those words. A state of absolute calm and absolute peace can also be representative of the idea of acting on your passion. So the first thing you might want to do is let go of the way you think, let go of the way you expect you're supposed to feel by choosing to do the things that you do choose to do, and just see if you're entering a new state, a new level of appreciation and gratitude and peace and calm and tranquility and contentment, which in and of themselves can be variations of the feeling that you could associate with acting on your passion. It doesn't mean you have to be walking down the street and laughing your head off or being on fire all the time.
Thank you. Okay, this one is, how do you handle waiting for an uncontrollable outcome, especially when others pressure you for answers or plans depend on it? How can you influence such a decision indirectly and stay positive when action isn't possible?
Well, first of all, we will have to assume that by your term uncontrollable outcome, that you may be talking about the idea of dropping insistence. That isn't clear in your question. Nevertheless, if you have developed a plan for something to theoretically occur, remember that all plans need to be adaptable. In other words, a plan should contain within it the ability to change the plan where necessary, to go with the flow, to go with the currents, to go with what happens, with what changes. So there needs to be some flexibility in there. And then you may find there are things you can act on if you're not too rigid about exactly the way you think the plan should proceed. So you might need a little bit more flexibility in what you call a plan that can give you more options of what outcomes could happen that could still serve the same purpose, that could still feel like you have arrived at the conclusion that is necessary for everyone concerned.
So maybe another example of that would be a situation where someone's child was taken hostage and they're just waiting and waiting for word or that the person would be released. So they would feel very much like it was an uncontrollable situation and they have tremendous emotional
If that's
investment.
what this person meant by uncontrollable.
I'm using that as an example.
You're using it as a different example.
Yes, it can be. Yes.
All right. So what are you asking?
How do people under those kinds of stressful situations where the outcome is of such great import and at the same time they don't have control, what is the state of being to choose to ride that kind of a uncontrollable outcome type thing?
Well, the first step would be to understand that even though it may seem you have no control over the situation, you always have control over your state of being, no matter what's going on. Remember, it's not about what happens, it's about what you do with what happens. That's the main principle. So staying in a state of being, I'm not saying you have to be happy that someone has been abducted, but staying in a stable state, a potentially positive state, or at the very least a neutral state, can allow you to be able to observe synchronicities that will come to you that can lead to solutions that would be beneficial for all. So you have to learn the lessons involved. You have to understand that it may be something that's part of your life path to bring you a lesson you need to learn how to deal with these things in a way that can be more constructive than what you're afraid of. So again, of course, it will always depend upon the specific situation and the specific circumstances and conditions of that situation. Even though you have posed a general question, you have to look at the specifics of what's going on, who's involved, what it is they hope to gain, and all of those things in order to allow synchronicity to direct your attention to specifically what can be done and specifically what actions can be taken. But the only way you're going to receive that information is by, at the very least, remaining in a neutral state, if not fully a positive state, knowing that you will be given the information you need to move forward in a constructive and positive way to learn the lessons that need to be learned and allow for a more positive and constructive outcome for all concerned.